Aw man, I've been waiting for this one. In April of 2023, I uploaded the broken top tiers of Heritage for the Future, and after that point, I had a desire to make a video talking about every character in this game. And since that point, I've almost done that. There's one more to go, and I ain't gonna waste any more time setting it up. Let's finally talk about Midler. Let me preface this video by stating this. Midler is one of my favorite fighting game characters ever. Even back in 2019 when I first played Heritage for the Future, I remember clearly gravitating towards this character even if I didn't know much about her origins, and I'd easily place her in my top 5 now. That being said, I think she's one of the most interesting characters in the game in many different ways, all the way down to her design and presence in the roster. You might recall that I mentioned her being one of the biggest challenges for the developers when JoJo's Venture, the game Heritage is an update of, was being made, and that's because she's barely a character in the original manga. Midler makes a grand total of 1 physical appearance in Stardust Crusaders, depicted after being defeated, so there wasn't exactly much to go off of when creating a fighting game character. In spite of this, Capcom's desire to use her was apparently enough that they managed to get Hirohiko Araki, the author of the JoJo manga, to make an entirely new design that they used in the game. One of the defining aesthetic trademarks of Heritage for the Future and JoJo's Venture is the use of redrawn art from the manga for portraits on the character select, versus screen, and the like, but obviously there was no existing art of Midler's new design to use in the game. To get around this, Capcom based the in-game art of Midler on drawings of the character Yukiko Yamagishi from a later JoJo part, which is fucking weird. The design itself was used in future JoJo media, but for some reason they didn't use it in the anime. Whack. Anyway, that's Midler's origins down, but how did they translate her into the game? Midler's stand, the High Priestess, is capable of shapeshifting and possessing mineral materials, a power she uses to attack the Joestar group in a submarine and later underwater. It's an ugly little thing, but surprisingly her attempt to use it to defeat Jotaro and his friends from a distance is captured perfectly in Midler's gameplay. I've always found her to be an oddity in this game. Midler feels very meta, but also very anti-meta at the same time. She's primarily a neutral-focused character, with strong zoning tools, excellent space control, great anti-airs. When it comes to keeping her distance and playing defensively, she's very strong, but she's held back primarily by pretty limited combo potential in stand-on and situational damage in stand-off. She's not the kind of character that's going to be hitting flashy tandem confirms all the time, but in spite of these problems, she's very capable. I suppose the best place to start is where we always do, with the basics. Equipped with fast and short dashes and a far-reaching hyper hop, Midler's mobility is commendable and allows her to dance around the screen with impunity. Midler likes the air quite a lot, so expect to make lots of use out of these various different ways to traverse the screen. Midler is, as you'd expect, an active stand character, so she can switch between stand-on and stand-off mode, and she has a double jump in stand-on mode. Onto her buttons, 5A is her fastest grounded stand-off button, along with 2A. Sporting a fairly big horizontal hitbox, the quick speed makes it a solid tool at close range as a pressure or combo starter and a quick anti-air. You can't really go wrong with this button, even if it isn't anything amazing as far as jabs go. 5B is a kick that moves Midler forward. It's a standing button that hits as a low, which already makes it evil, and it makes for a good combo tool. Linking out of 2A and 5A, this move can be cancelled into the Harpoon special for a quick and short combo, and it makes for a good tandem confirm button. Not too bad all things considered. 5C similarly makes for a high damage combo filler. It's one of her most damaging normals, which can make for some pretty hard hitting short combos and potentially longer loops or extensions since it links out of 5A. Midler's 2A is also a 3-frame normal like 5A and sports good reach and frame advantage, making it a versatile combo starter. As it's her fastest low, anytime you find yourself pressuring people, this is the ideal button to do it, especially since it leads into a full combo on hits, although this can vary based on your range, since certain buttons won't be able to reach if your 2A connects from too far. The dashing version of 2A deserves special mention too, as it's also pretty fast and combo friendly, and allows Midler to enforce a good ground control thanks to the fast and cancelable nature of her dashes. Phenomenal normal overall. 2B is surprisingly fast for a button of its strength, being 4-frame startup but also having quite sluggish recovery. The hitbox makes it a decent poke, but the reward on hit is minimal as it doesn't really combo into anything besides 236S. You can use the dashing version to increase the range at which you can poke with it, which is pretty nice. Not a bad normal, but not particularly flashy or amazing. Personally speaking, I've rarely ever used this button, which I'm sure doesn't mean a lot to some people, but make of it what you will. 2C on the other hand, I've used plenty because it's a really good button. Sporting massive range and the ability to special cancel, this is one of your best pokes and it scores a knockdown on hit, so it's very rewarding. Midler's 2C also has a ton of active frames, so it's a very strong meaty option, all the while making it much safer on block than it normally is. While the regular version of 2C may not seem that impressive on its own, the dashing version is what really stands out, as you can dramatically increase the already long range and it maintains identical frame data. The only caveat is that it does have very long recovery, and while this can be offset somewhat by special canceling it, many of Midler's specials have pretty long startup, so it's hardly a get out of jail free card. It's a good button, but not really something to be abused. Midler's dashing normals are odd. As I've already detailed, her crouching dash normals are basically the same as their stationary counterparts. Meanwhile, she only has one good standing dash attack, which is activated by all three of her normal buttons. Dash 5A, 5B, and 5C all perform the same attack where Midler does a cartwheel flip. This is an interesting normal, but the hitbox is placed in a weird spot near her backside instead of on her legs, so you gotta be closer than you'd think to hit with it. It hits twice, and both hits can be super or special cancelled, allowing for a combo. You can also use it to set up a tick throw. Ultimately, I don't think it's too bad, but the main issue is how unsafe it can be. It also has tons of whiff recovery, so be careful using it to approach. Her air normals are standard fare, each fulfilling a fairly unique niche. JA is your fastest one. Use it as an instant overhead for quick round closers or mix-up scenarios. JC is your slowest but also your most damaging and allows for good damage combos when used as a starter. The hitbox is fairly high up though, so you'll have to do it pretty deep into the jump to get it to connect on many characters, especially when they're crouching. On the bright side, this particular range makes it a solid air-to-air. JB is one of the gods you pray to. This normal's hitbox allows it to hit cross-up, making it a very good jump-in as you can immediately initiate a mix-up. Doing it off of a hyper hop greatly extends the range of this mix-up, and even if the cross-up hits too high to get a combo, you can still potentially get a tick throw. This is the main normal you want to use when you're jumping around your opponent like a gnat. It's tremendously annoying and very strong. Midler has a few command normals. 3B is essentially just 2A but with a little bit of forward movement. It's got utility in combos, but if you want a 2A that moves forward, you have dash 2A, which goes farther and recovers way faster, so 3B is not really suited to being an approach option. 6B. Most Midlers I've seen consider this move pretty useless. Personally, I like it. I can't really say why, but it's kinda hard to argue for it. It's slower than some other pokes and it doesn't really give you much reward, barely outdamaging the much faster 2B and hardly outranging it either. It does have one nasty use though. On hit, it does 20 damage to stand gauges, so if it hits a stand-on opponent, it'll bring that meter down fast. J2C is another highly unorthodox normal that essentially acts as a dive kick. High Priestess turns into a construction beam, which Midler hitches a ride on. It moves down pretty fast, which can make it good for meeting people in the air, but the problem is that it's just horrendously unrewarding on hit. Regardless of if its hit is blocked or whiffs, once Midler hits the ground, she'll backflip towards the floor during the recovery. The animation is very long and leaves you open for punishment, but given the short hit stun, it can actually make punishing it a little finicky, which is good for Midler. It's honestly a real solid move and I enjoy using it a lot. Just keep in mind that if the opponent is ready for it, you may pay dearly for using it. It's normally not cancelable, but a bug allows it to be cancelled if you perform it on certain frames of Midler's jump. Highly useful, but also very hard to do. Midler's grab is really great, one of the best things about her. It causes a hard knockdown on hit, so on top of the damage and Midler's many way to get tick throws with 2A, 5ABC, JB, it's a real rewarding grab to land as it can grant solid Oki, allowing for an easy meaty to keep up the offense. However, like with any move that knocks down, how much you can take advantage of it depends on the matchup due to differing wake-up speeds among the cast, as well as screen position. Still, even if you can't meaty with a button, you can usually throw out a card to establish control of the screen. In stand-on, Midler is joined by her stand, who transforms into a bunch of different objects, giving Midler access to lots of long-range buttons and easy chain combos. Her stand 5A and stand 2A both provide fast, close-range buttons that convert into auto combos if you hit them enough times, as well as being hit confirmable into your chain combos. Stand 5B whiffs fairly fast, making it a good way to build meter. Her stand 2B is interesting as it shares the same animation as her 2C. It's a little faster, but it doesn't knock down, which is unfortunate, especially for the dash version. It's not terrible though. Her stand 2C on the other hand is this janky looking move. Unlike her other attacks that involve vehicles, this one is only okay, acting as a decent anti-air but one with a hitbox that isn't as good as others, which can result in it trading with jump-ins, which is kind of annoying. Stand 5C sends High Priestess out as a buzzsaw. It's a long-ranged, multi-hitting button, but Midler also has two command normals, Stand 4C and Stand 6C, which will alter the trajectory of the buzzsaw. Very long recovery means it's liable to being whiff punished or blown up by supers, but it does its job as a good ender for chain combos and an okay-ish poke. Speaking of command normals, J2C will still perform a unique attack in Stand On. Stand J2C is another dive kick-esque move, but this one is complete garbage. Unlike the Stand Off version, this one goes directly down and it hits twice with the second hit knocking down. Other than the obvious issue of the fact that characters in Stand Off can't be knocked down, it's very possible for the second hit to completely whiff, usually when it hits cross-up, which leaves Midler horrendously punishable on hit. It's also unsafe on block, so the main two mix-ups it can contribute to, hitting overhead and hitting cross-up, are both insanely risky and highly unrewarding. Even J2C, for not doing that much damage and potentially being unsafe on hit, can at least be a little tricky to punish if the opponent isn't expecting it. Stand J2C just leaves her dumbass flipping through the air right next to the opponent, giving them 12 years to plan out their punish. Specials, on the other hand, are where this character really starts to stand out. She has 3, and 2 of them are absolutely great. The other is not. Oh, and I suppose there's also her stand activation attack, 236S. It's a fast startup attack with decent damage and it knocks down at the end of long enough combos, making it a good ender. Nothing extravagant, but very effective. First up, the not great special. 623X has High Priestess turn into a weight, the same weight in Stand J2C, and slam down. Apparently any move that involves this weight is doomed to be ass, cause the special is kinda lame. So the main draw is that it hits overhead, which is nice. What's not nice is the extremely low return you get for actually hitting it. It can be comboed off of, but doing so requires extremely close proximity to link out of it. On top of that, the actual move's damage isn't that high and the startup is slow. Even just trying to do strings in it can be dangerous, as push block can cause the move to whiff and make Midler very unsafe, so it's usually best used as a last minute overhead to close out rounds quickly. The stand-on version doesn't fare much better with more recovery and no potential combos. On to the two main specials you'll be using. First is 236X, a very standard projectile but a very good one for this character to have. The harpoons have very fast travel speed, especially the C version, and on hit they stun the opponent for a few seconds. The thing about these harpoons is that they don't do that much damage, but the speed makes them a very good zoning tool when combined with her other special that I'll get to. They can also clash with other projectiles, allowing Midler to hold her own in Fireball Wars. Another highlight of this move is that the hit stun allows for combo extensions in the corner, giving Midler very solid damage for a zoner if she can land a good hit. The major issue with this move is that it's fairly slow, so it's kinda easy to jump, and getting jumped is a death sentence. But Midler has lots of ways to control the air, so as long as you're not too predictable, you could still make good use of these harpoons. The stand-on harpoons are identical to the stand-off version, but they do recover slightly faster, making them just as good at zoning. Finally, we have the cars, not the band. 214X is an absolutely excellent move that gives Midler fantastic control of the neutral. High Priestess goes underground and after a short delay emerges as a car which pops up from the ground. Each button will have the car emerge from a different distance, with A being the closest to Midler and C being farthest. The main thing that makes this move so strong is that the cars are air unblockable, which allows them to be used to shut down the most common answer to Midler's harpoon zoning, jumping. With this and the harpoons, Midler's zoning is very annoying and effective, but the nice thing is that Midler can also move shortly before the cars pop up, allowing her to use it to reposition. For being such a good zoning tool, Midler's cars are also a pretty damn good move for pressure. You can cancel buttons into them and follow up after it hits for some solid damage since they launch on hit, or get a mix-up on block. The stand-off version is the main one you want to use, as the stand-on version isn't nearly as good. Midler remains stood in place while the cars are popping up, meaning longer recovery and way more risk. Even if the cars are still a good anti-air, there's no good reason to risk it. The cars also happen to be the star of Midler's best super, which makes for an appreciably appropriate segue into said supers. 214AA Motor Show is an amazing super and your primary meter dump. Many of the strengths of the special apply, namely the fact that they're air unblockable. What changes is the prolonged block stun, allowing Midler to perform mix-ups between her low-hitting 2A and instant overheads with JA. On top of that, the cars all fully connecting does very good damage, and the super is invincible on startup, making it her best reversal. However, in certain situations, it's possible for the opponent to drop out of the cars, which can dramatically decrease the damage they do and potentially leave you vulnerable to a punish due to the big flaw with this move. With the car special and the car super, both render Midler unable to block while the cars are on screen. If the opponent manages to brave the cars and get past them, Midler has to take care to evade the opponent until the super ends and she can block again. Thankfully, you can still roll during this period, so you're not completely boned, but caution is still advised. The stand-on version is also similarly not worth using. 236AA Megaton Harpoon Shot is a harpoon that on hit triggers a cinematic. This one might do more damage to the players themselves than to the characters. It's decent as a combo ender, but it doesn't do huge amounts of damage on its own compared to other raw supers. Done at the end of longer combos as an ender, it tends to scale pretty harshly as well. For 1 bar, a tandem confirm in a 236S ender will generally get you more reward, plus more bar built back, and less strain on the eyes. Finally, we have my personal favorite Midler super, 623AA Dinner Time. This super is a command grab with a fun twist as it tracks and has incredible range. Even from full screen, this will catch the opponent and chomp him up. Unfortunately, the monumental startup means this move is about as viable of a mix-up tool as Dio's stand 623X that crosses the opponent up but doesn't need to be blocked like a cross-up. Generally, you're not going to land this unless the opponent just doesn't know, but remember, it is a full screen command grab. While it does sometimes require snappy timing, Dinner Time can be used as a punish for certain slow supers, and it's a very powerful one, doing pretty high damage. It's especially useful against certain projectile supers, since it has invincibility at the start, so it can be a potent anti-zoning tool. This is all dependent on timing, as if you're too late, the invincibility will wear off and Midler will be hit by the projectiles. Practical, but requires very good timing to make it so. When it comes to Midler's game plan, a lot of people tend to label her as a zoner, and while she has solid keep away, there's definitely a lot more to this character, like with a lot of others in this game. In fact, it's hard to really even describe an all-encompassing game plan for her because of how unconventional her kit is and how much what she wants to do can change based on the situation or the matchup. Even the size of the stage Midler is playing on can dramatically change what she has to do in order to be able to win matches. Undeniably though, Midler is very good at laming as other active stands are. The double jump she gets when she's in stand on is very good for stalling, and cars allow her to create lots of space. However, in saying that, Midler's zoning, while strong, can also be very committal, as both of her projectiles have fairly long startup. A bad harpoon or car can be a death sentence depending on the matchup. Given the generally low damage yielded by this zoning versus how much a lot of the cats can do off of jump-ins, sometimes it's not worth the hassle, especially when Midler has other ways to approach games beyond just zoning. The general offensive flowchart of Midler is fairly simple but also pretty effective, since she has good air control and also good ground control thanks to harpoons and 2C, while the car super contributes to both. Her kit is very versatile and allows her to play at multiple ranges. Another thing she's very good at is tech chasing. She has lots of moves that launch, and the hitbox on her air normals like JB and JC lets her chase up techs very well, so it's hard to escape these situations against Midler. She gets lots of her damage from these kinds of interactions. Beyond her ability to keep out with projectiles or use her grounded normals for harassment, one of the strongest and most annoying things about her is her proficiency in the air. She has tons of very strong jump-ins, including JB, which I already detailed as being very strong because of its cross-up potential. In general, Midler's jumps are very powerful. She only has 2 pre-jump frames. Pre-jump is basically a state where your character hasn't fully entered the air yet after a jump has been inputted. During pre-jump you can't block, and getting hit will cause you to act as if you had never jumped, meaning you'll eat a full grounded combo. Midler having only 2 pre-jump frames makes her less vulnerable than other characters who spend longer in the pre-jump state, although the ability to cancel your pre-jump frames for many characters does make this a little less pertinent. Still, it's good to have as it leaves her less vulnerable to things like throws and wake-up situations. Another fun Midler jump property is that she becomes invulnerable if she air blocks while in stand-on. These iframes last until she hits the ground again, allowing her to skirt out of certain situations after blocked air-to-airs. Similarly, she also has iframes when landing from a jump in stand-on. This is completely unconditional. She doesn't need to block or anything to get it. It's not a huge amount of invul or anything, but it lets her be much safer after jump-ins, which is definitely appreciated. Unfortunately, she does have a particular flaw that makes these quirks a little less hard to exploit. Midler can go into stand-on after a jump, but unlike every other active stand character, if Midler goes into stand-on in midair, she will not be able to do her second jump. She's the only active stand with this distinction, which hurts her laming game a bit. I almost want to believe the invincibility on landing and stand on is meant to compensate for this, but given the game we're discussing, I find it hard to believe the devs had that kind of foresight. In spite of this, Midler gets a lot of mileage out of being in the air, although you obviously should be wary of anti-airs, and badly timed JBs can be punished too. There are some more issues though. Midler's pressure can be fairly strong, but it's also easily punished if she's too predictable. In particular, doing button into car on block leaves a gap that can be punished without proper spacing, so just abusing this string is going to get you killed. Don't be afraid to use harpoons as an ender to your block strings instead to mix things up and potentially condition the opponent into respecting your other unsafe options. Her throw is also very strong and grants good ogizemi, so you should be tossing folks a lot. Combos are another complication for Midler. She's hardly a low damage character, let's get that straight. With proper tandem inputs, her output can be staggering, but her tandem inputs themselves are a little different from other cast members due to how odd her stand-on normals are. Most characters can get away with mashing ABC as many times as possible, but Midler's optimal tandem inputs are slightly different, which can make getting those tandems a little awkward. Her tandem confirms are also fairly situational, and she doesn't always have a consistent way to land them. Mid-screen she has simple but damaging B&Bs and tandem confirms, and in the corner she gets access to some sick loops thanks to the high hit stun of the harpoons. 214 AA also does mad damage on a full connect. In stand-on though, her combos are a lot more limited and she doesn't have much opportunities for damage in this state, and in general she's beaten in damage output and accessibility by most of the top tiers, which kinda sucks when they aren't hampered by losing their double jump if they activate their stand in midair. Another big problem with Midler is that she takes double damage during the recovery of certain moves, since she's considered to be in remote mode during the recovery for some reason. This mostly happens with some of her stand-on buttons as well as the dinner time super, so be very wary of whiffing these buttons. The consequences can be dire. Also, her stand-on hurtbox is fucking huge, which makes dealing with pressure in this state way more brutal. This, along with the lack of combos, can make her stand-on feel rather weak in terms of offense, but stand-on Midler is still worth using for the double jump, the faster harpoons, and the immunity to knockdown and chip. I suppose the best way to sort of surmise her strengths and weaknesses is that while she's a strong and flexible character who can do many things well, she doesn't really excel at any of these spots. Against a Jotaro or a Vice or a Dio, one jump over a harpoon can mean death, or it can mean you now have to deal with these characters playing passively and you having to find a way to get the life lead back. However, outside of these situations, she has pretty damn good neutral tools to deal with a lot of these characters, so it's all going to come down to how well you weigh your risk and reward in any given situation. Midler has a versatile kit, and her focus on freeform neutral makes her a good character to learn the game's systems with. She's a solid mid-tier who you can be lame as shit with, or you can aggro and hit those sick 1-frame 5A 5C corner loops. They both work and, frankly, they're both fun. Since she's my main, I suppose I'll cap this video off by explaining why I personally love this character. As I mentioned at the offset, Midler is the character who really stood out the most to me even back in 2019. I sucked at hitting the links in this game, still do, so a character who supposedly didn't really care about combos was a big appeal to me. Now in 2024, having become far more invested into fighting games, the big appeal to me is her mobility and strong neutral control. She's the kind of character that feels as if she can do almost anything in regards to movement and screen control. Even though her win condition is a little more vague than the other members of the roster, it's that ambiguity that I think makes her fun to play. There's a lot to figure out, and it's not always easy, but it is always rewarding. I also think there's a really novel quality to her design and her presence in the game. Midler was hardly a character in the manga, and the way Capcom fleshed her out with a new design and some new attacks, in many ways it makes her just as much of a Capcom creation as an Araki creation. Heritage for the Future's existence to me has always felt so miraculous as an extremely polished licensed fighting game from the 90s, so seeing the unique circumstances behind Midler's appearance in this game is really cool and makes her extremely memorable. To sum it up, Midler is queen. Always. And that's it. With Midler done, I have now covered every character in JoJo Heritage for the Future in some capacity. That said, I've seen a few questions from people that I want to answer. First up, am I gonna stop talking about JoJo's? Fuck no. This game is awesome, and way more people deserve to know about it. The Broken Top Tiers of JoJo video goes over every top tier, but I did end up revisiting Kakyoin and Dio in future videos, and some people have asked me if I plan to do the same with the others, namely Pet Shop, Vanilla Ice, Jotaro, and Polnareff. The answer is probably, but that's a ways. For now, I'd like to take a break from this form of heritage content. I've also considered making these kinds of single character breakdown videos for other games, maybe Persona 4 Arena Ultimax or Vampire Savior, so if you have any suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments. Heritage for the Future is a game I hold very dear to my heart for what it's done for the channel and for my own personal life. When I was in a slump, it was playing and learning this game with friends that helped me find joy again, which I'll always appreciate it for. A major thanks goes to the community that's kept this game alive through creating resources to learn it, running tournaments, and offering me personally feedback on these videos as well as the replays I've used in them. To be honest, I made those JoJo's videos last year solely with the intent of just talking about the game, and I never would have ever imagined that they'd reached any kind of audience, but I'm really glad they did, and I appreciate anyone who's watched them or just played the game. Thank you all for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed my ramblings. Stay tuned because I'll have one more video out before the end of the year on the game. Thank you all for watching, and as usual, have a wonderful night. Take care. Hey everyone, this is the part of the video where I thank my channel members, all of you beautiful people. So thank you to Old Man Han, Kemi the Killer, Jawsba, Mortis, Arg Seals, Wormy, Terry Hints, Perfect Orange, Pet Shop from Fortnite, Happy the Hap Hap, HPHK, Gundog92, Isaac the Collector, Kira the Stowaway, Gerald Say, Sonic Frontiers is a good game, and Loop Zoopler. I really appreciate all of you guys for the support. It means the world to me, especially, coming up on the end of the year. It's hard to believe that I've been doing this for so long and it's been going so well, but thank you all. Quick disclaimer, this member shoutout is being recorded on December the 16th, so any channel members that join afterwards, I won't be able to thank them. It's just a consequence of how I'm having to record this because the holidays are a really awkward time for me. So I'm really sorry, but just know that if you pledge after the release of this video, I appreciate you and thank you for the support. Just as a retroactive thing. But anyway, thank you again for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I love you all.